Hey everyone. So today we're diving into a really big topic, anxiety. And specifically, we're looking at a tool you've probably heard about a ton, affirmations. Are they a genuine source of hope, or is it all just hype? Let's get into it. First, to get a sense of just how common this is, we're talking about 40 million adults in the United States alone. That is a huge number of people who are looking for ways to manage these feelings and, just feel better. So, what do we actually mean when we say anxiety? Well, on paper, it's this combination of worry, stress, nervousness, and fear. But here's the thing that's so important to get. For millions, it's not just some passing feeling. It can become absolutely paralyzing and seriously get in the way of just living your life. And that's where affirmations come into the picture. You've probably heard them before. Things like I am calm or I am strong. They're basically positive self-help statements that are designed to help you shift your mindset and nudge you toward more positive behaviors. The whole idea is to kind of talk yourself into a better headspace. Which, of course, brings us to the million-dollar question we're asking today. Do they really work? I mean, is repeating a positive phrase to yourself actually powerful enough to fight something as complicated as anxiety? Let's see what the research says. All right, so first up, let's explore the argument for using affirmations. Is there any real science behind the power of positive thinking? The core theory is actually pretty simple. It's all about replacement. The idea is that your brain has a hard time holding two completely opposite thoughts at the same time. So if you deliberately introduce a positive idea, you can sort of crowd out the anxious one. And there's actually some fascinating research on this. A 2016 study had people with generalized anxiety disorder try this exact thing, replacing their worries with positive thoughts. And the results were pretty clear. They saw their anxiety and worry levels go down. But here's the really wild part. It worked even when the positive thoughts had nothing to do with what they were worried about. That suggests that just shifting your brain's focus to literally anything positive can make a real difference. And it's not just for generalized anxiety. When it comes to social anxiety, affirmations might work in a slightly different but just as important way. The thinking here is that they can help boost your sense of self-worth. And when you feel better about who you are, you're a lot less likely to see, say, a neutral look on someone's face as a personal attack or threat. So what do these sound like in practice? Well, they can be simple things like, I am safe and not threatened, or I stay calm in new situations, or they could be something more empowering, like there is no obstacle I cannot overcome. Really, the key is to find statements that feel authentic or at least a little bit believable to you. Okay, so that all sounds pretty great, right? But this is where the plot thickens. We really need to talk about the other side of the coin, the potential downside, and when all this forced positivity can actually blow up in your face. I know it sounds completely backward, but could repeating positive statements to yourself actually make your anxiety worse? Well, some of the research suggests that for certain people, the answer is a surprising yes. Check this out. A really eye-opening study from 2009 had people repeat the phrase, I'm a lovable person. The results were kind of shocking. For people who already had low self-esteem, the study found that they felt worse about themselves and experienced lower moods after saying it. It completely backfired. So, what in the world is going on here? Well, it all comes down to where you're starting from. For the people in the study who already felt pretty good about themselves, the affirmation gave them a little boost. No harm done. But for those who didn't, forcing them to say something they just didn't believe created this internal battle, which only made their negative feelings stronger. And that is the absolute key takeaway from the con side of this argument. Your mindset is everything. Trying to just paper over negative feelings with forced positivity doesn't work for everyone. For some, it just shines a big spotlight on the gap between how they feel and how they think they should feel, which, just makes everything feel worse. So, with all this conflicting information, where do affirmations fit in? Well, to answer that, we have to zoom out and look at the bigger picture of proven professional treatments for anxiety. When you talk to medical professionals, the two main pillars of treatment are usually therapy and medication, and they play very different roles. Therapy really aims to get at the underlying causes of anxiety. It teaches you new ways to think and respond to things. Medication, on the other hand, is generally more about managing the symptoms to give you some relief, but it doesn't usually fix the root problem. Now, within therapy, there are some really effective approaches. You've probably heard of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. That's all about learning to spot and challenge those negative thought patterns that fuel anxiety. Then there's something called exposure therapy, which sounds intense, but it's a gradual process where you confront your fears in a safe environment with a therapist's help. And on the medication side, doctors have several options. There are anti-anxiety meds like benzodiazepines, which are usually for short-term relief. Then you have antidepressants like SSRIs, which are often a longer-term strategy. And there are even beta blockers, which are actually blood pressure meds that can help control the really physical symptoms like a pounding heart or shaky hands.
Okay, so we've looked at the pros, we've looked at the cons, and we've looked at the professional treatments. Let's pull this all together. What's our final verdict here? And more importantly, what does this all mean for you?
Here's the bottom line. Affirmations are not a magic bullet. They just aren't. For some people, especially those who have a pretty solid foundation of self-esteem, they can be a genuinely helpful tool to have in your mental health toolkit. But, and this is so important, they are absolutely not a substitute for professional medical help if you are seriously struggling. So when is it time to maybe move beyond self-help and talk to a doctor? Well, here are some really clear signs to look out for. If you're dealing with negative thoughts that just won't quit, if your sleep or your appetite is all over the place, if you realize you're just not enjoying things anymore, or if the anxiety is getting in the way of your work, your school, or your relationships, it's time to make that call.
And please, remember that you do not have to figure this out on your own. On top of doctors and therapists, support groups can be an amazing resource. Just connecting with other people who actually get what you're going through can be incredibly powerful. Organizations like the Anxiety and Depression Association of America are a great place to start looking.
So affirmations for anxiety, hope or hype? Well, it seems the answer is a little bit of both. They can be helpful, for sure, but only under the right conditions for the right person, which kind of leaves us with one last big question to think about. Whether you use formal affirmations or not, what is the story you are telling yourself every single day? Thanks for joining me.